Golf's not just a game and it's not played on just grass. Lawn Solutions Australia is the home of Australia's best sports turf of varieties. For the world's best grasses like Tiff Tuff, Sir Grange, Primo and Trinity, contact Lawn Solutions Australia at lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. That's lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au. Hello and welcome to episode 51 of The Thing About Golf, Golf Australia magazine's eternal quest to answer the unanswerable question, why do people get addicted to this absurd game? My name's Rod Murray and joining me on the line from Scotland is the host of this week's episode, John Huggan. Huggy, always good to catch up. Tell the listeners the treat you have in store with this episode's guest.
Well, I have to admit that this is purely down to my, reverting to being a fan rather than a journalist. I've long been a huge admirer of Neil Coles and his golf. He's well into his 80s now, but I can remember watching him back in the day. He was a beautiful golfer, beautiful rhythm, fantastic style, just so consistent. He won tournaments in, forgetting whether it's 5 or 6 decades, it doesn't really matter which, it's still pretty impressive. And I did a story on him a couple of years ago. I went to see him at his house near Wentworth, as I did for this podcast, with the working headline, the best golfer America's never heard of.
Why? Why is he the best golfer America's never heard of?
Well, he had a bad experience in an aeroplane back in 1960, flying back from Scotland to London, and vowed then that he would never set foot in an airplane again, and he never did. So anytime he played in the Ryder Cup in America, he took the boat over.
I'm already all in Neil Coles.
Yeah,
I share his...
I tell you what, I would advise people just Google this guy. If there's anything on YouTube or anything, just watch him hitting the ball. He's a beautiful, beautiful golfer. As I say, I was a huge fan.
Different time, obviously, Huggy. Unthinkable in this modern era that somebody could be the best player that America had never heard of, because no truly good player doesn't go to America.
Well, they all get in aeroplanes now. Yeah. I think I asked them about it.
Got their own, Huggy.
Yes, that's true. But yeah, I did obviously ask him about it, and I don't think he's got any regrets on it. He's had a nice life. He's won a lot of tournaments. He would have won in America had he gone there and stayed. Played in one Masters in America and had to withdraw because he got a bad case of the flu. Couldn't play the last round or something. Never played in the US Open, never played in the PGA, but did well in a few Opens. He shot a 65 at St Andrews in the first round of the Open, 1970, I think. And he was joint runner-up behind Tom Weiskopf in 1973 at Troon. So a hell of a player. That's all I can say.
As you said, Huggy, in his 80s, one of the things we're trying to do with this podcast, and that I try to do with all of the podcasts we do, is to capture things that we otherwise miss. We lost Peter Thompson before we had a chance to do a Thing About Golf episode with him, and that's a shame in so many ways, although Thompson, we've got all of his writings, and he did plenty of publicity and whatnot. Neil's, as you said, into his 80s, and he's not the most dynamic speaker, is he? But if we listen, there's an awful lot to gain from this interview, isn't there? Yeah,
he's a quietly spoken guy. He's always been that way. He was chairman of the board of the European Tour for years and years, which I can only imagine that those meetings were quietly, softly approach to things. But I tell you what, there's a couple of instances he describes in the podcast where he was a hard man when he needed to be a hard man. Put it that way. But as you say, very quietly spoken and a gentle man, really, in the best sense of the word.
You mentioned you'd written about him a few years ago and whatnot. What were the things that you really wanted to ask him? What are some of the highlights we should look for in this interview? Because it's a pretty long one too, which is good.
There's the obvious, he was involved in the breakaway when the PGA in Britain, the European Tour was formed in the early 70s. Neil Coles was one of the kind of rebels. Mm-hmm. He described himself as a rebel at the time with a smile on his face. He was one of them. It was like the same thing happened in America where the tournament players broke away from the club pros, and it was the same kind of thing in Britain. And he was one of the leaders.
With them, Huggy, which they will rue again this week.
Yes.
They didn't grab the Ryder Cup on the way out the door. They left it with the PGA.
That's very true. But, I mean, Coles played in umpteen Ryder Cups. He's got some good stories. Played first one in 1961, and he played in virtually every one through to 1977. He never played for Europe. He played right up until the last GB&I team.
Wow.
And he had a few good scalps. He beat some good players.
Yeah, fabulous stuff. Well, Huggy, we'll get on with the interview with Neil Coles. I'm sure it was a personal highlight for you, and I'm sure it's going to be something that we're all going to enjoy over the next hour or two. Thanks for taking some time today.
My pleasure.
Neil Coles, thanks for being with me on the Thing About Golf podcast.
Hey, pleasure.
I always start with the same question.
Right.
What is the thing about golf for you, or what was?
Well, my father ran a pretty large business, and I left school and didn't know what to do. But I'd already played golf as a junior at the local club, so he said, "Why don't you give golf a try, and I'll sponsor you?" And so the intention was never to be a golf pro at a golf club, but I wanted to play golf in golf tournaments, and that was the ambition. And then I worked very hard from the age of 16 through to 21, when I won the first event of any note, which was the Hearts Championship, with Di Reese, other county players, good players in the field, and that was the start of my golfing.
Was that kind of the confirmation that you needed? Something like that?
Yes, yeah. I mean, you never know because of the nerves and the temperament and it's not just the game. You're playing the game well enough, but then it's all the other bits and pieces that go with it.
There's plenty of examples of people who had it 1 minute and lost it the next. I mean,
That's right.
Do guys like you walk around sometimes with there but for the grace of God?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you do have your moments. I mean, of three putting a lot, and that you often wonder, whether this is you're ever going to get out of it. But luckily I did.
Yeah. Well, it's a daft question to have asked you. I mean, you lasted longer than just about anybody else at playing at a decent level. I mean, you won in 6 different decades.
Yeah, that's right.
Remarkable feat.
Yeah.
I mean, any explanation for that other than, I loved watching you play. Your swing was, beautiful.
I think if you look at the modern player, they're all trying to fade the ball. I was lucky that I hit upon if you as today's coaching and the technology that they all employ, they have such a good start. But in our day, it was more of a feel thing.
Yeah.
And luckily for me, I all saw the ball left to right. Mm-hmm. And I developed a method which, whether it was accidental or intentional, but I always hit the ball left to right. Mm-hmm. And that gave me consistency. Yeah. Took out the left-hand side of the golf course. Yeah. And that was lucky for me, and I think, but it was luck.
Well, I mean, I watched you, a lot. I mean, you were one of my favourites without blowing too much smoke up your backside. To watch, beautiful rhythm to it. I
always worked on that.
Yeah. Was there anything ever went seriously wrong? I mean, obviously, clearly not, and given how long you played. But
small things, grip, ball position, alignment. Those were the sort of basics that I always worked on. Yeah. But that was about all.
You make it sound easy. Yeah. Everyone's shaking their heads at this point.
Yeah.
But I bumped into Ken Brown, actually, mutual friend of ours at Wentworth. And he was saying, ask Neil, he says, he reckons that you were the first tour pro that in Britain, you know, the guys that before that, they always had a club job as well as playing in tournaments. And he reckons you might have been at least one of the first that didn't do that. You just played golf for a living.
Yes, I think I probably was. I think Malcolm Gregson was. He was, I don't know whether he came a little bit after me, but I was lucky that I had a father who had quite a big business. He ran, we had 23 shops in the home counties of shoe repairing and retail, and him and his brother ran those. And so it was a backup, if you like. That was the family business, which it's been the family business for the last 3 generations.
Yes.
And in fact, I had a shop of my own at one stage, but that was always a backup, and that gave me the sponsorship to enable me not to be a club pro.
Yeah, you weren't rushing back to the shop.
No, that's right.
Yeah.
So, and I could just concentrate on playing golf, which the modern player does.
Yeah, I mean you were the first. Yeah, you sort of set the trend.
Right. Yeah.
Did your dad give you a sort of time limit, or were you just said, see how it goes?
He was always have you been practicing today? And
right.
You know, and
but he wanted you to treat it as a job then, basically.
Yes. Oh, yes. So. It was definitely a job. Yeah.
And when you know, you mentioned that the Hearts Open, I mean, when did it sort of occur to you that, you know, there is a good living to be made in that, somebody that could play at your level? I mean, what was the biggest check you ever earned? The players today would probably get a wee laugh at this.
Well, 25,000 for the Senior British Open as a senior was the biggest check in a career.
Yeah. In
my major time, 10,000 for the PGA Championship.
What's that? 76 in.
I think it was 76.
It was the Penfold PGA back then, wasn't it? Yeah. £10,000.
Yeah.
I mean, they get that for showing up at a cocktail party.
I know.
Change days. Do you ever think, you know, what if, or does it not bother you?
You know, I mean, every era is different, isn't it? That's the. You know, Peter Allis, Bernard Hunt used to win and get 300 quid for a win. You know, where I never did. Yeah, that low, but
I remember Peter Allis telling me that he won something. I think it was last time he won a tournament, and he was walking out with a check that, you know, was like 18 months' salary for the ordinary guy in the street.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Which was a lot of money back then, but it was a tiny amount of money now.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah, minute.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to get into the modern game a bit, but since I kind of touched on it there, how do you view the way that the golf is played at the top level now compared with when you did it? I mean, obviously the equipment's different, the technology's different, they hit the ball so much further, the balls are better, everything technology-wise is better.
I think the game, if you like, the R&A USGA would not have envisaged the development of new materials in the clubs, carbon fibre, titanium, and the ball improvement over the years. We used to test balls for Dunlops up in Liverpool, and the guys that developed the golf balls were boffins. You know, they were
men in white coats.
Yes, that's right. And they could make a golf ball with a dimple change, do whatever they wanted to. And it was quite an eye-opener in those days to see what you could do with a golf ball.
In terms of distance,
distance, yeah. I don't remember the DDH ball.
Yeah.
When we tested that, they didn't tell us what the difference was. So we went up there and we tested it. And at the end of the session, they said, well, what do you think of it? Does it go further? And we said, oh, yes, it's definitely going further. And they said, well, it goes 9 yards further than anything else we've got.
Yeah.
And, that was
probably just the start of it.
That was just the start of it.
Yeah.
And they actually asked our advice on how we should sell it. And we said, well, don't give it to the general public. Just let us use it. And Sandy Lyle won the first tournament after that with the DDH ball at the Benson and Hedges.
Right.
And that gave them the momentum to release the golf ball.
It seemed to me, though, that I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the priorities were different back then. When you were playing, before that, was distance really something that anybody thought about that much? It's become the big priority now.
Not as long as you were long enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to, in those days, I could go up to Liverpool, and it was on a rugby ground, and I hit it consistently 260, which, if you put those two shots together, gave you enough length to get up a 525 or a par 5. And we had a whole bag full of woods that we could use, 1, 2, 3, 4 different woods that, which I don't think they do these days so much. But
they have 2 metals in their bag now. Really.
That's right.
That's about it. Yeah.
And
a hybrid.
The sort of one of my favourite clubs was a 2 wood, which I could sort of manoeuvre a lot. And, but
yeah, well, you say that now. Manoeuvring the ball is something that's been lost to a great extent at the top level, basically because the ball
doesn't move,
doesn't let them do it, so they don't have to do it.
Doesn't spin. No.
I mean, I don't know if you share. I mean, my misgivings. I mean, I'm old enough now to remember watching you play in your generation, and Trevino and Seve and all the rest of them, and the movement of the ball sideways was a big part of it. Now that's almost been gone from the top level. I mean, do you share my misgivings about that? Or?
Well, I mean, when we played the 162 ball, you had to manoeuvre it in such a way that it dropped softly onto the hard surfaces that we had in those days without automatic watering, there was no target golf in those days, unless it had poured with rain the night before.
So the ball was on the ground a lot more.
And you were pitching the ball 20 yards short of the greens to run into the greens, and so it was a different game, different go, and you had to sort of make the ball land softly, so you had to fade it, and it's different. It was a different technique.
Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely, but I maintain that it was better back then at your level. It was a better game to watch, and it was probably a better game to play. I mean, what do you think?
Probably. You had to work the ball. When you think of the players of the time, Christie Senior, beautiful player, great hands. Peter Thompson, they're all sort of players of.
It was always. I mean, it was always fun to watch and think, "Well, I wonder what he's going to do here." But now I don't wonder very much. No, it's pretty one-dimensional stuff.
Just bash it down there, 300 and something or other.
Yeah, I mean, they're all great, hugely talented. I go on this argument sometimes, and the players say, "Oh, they take offence at I'm inferring that they're less talented than the previous generations," which is not the case at all.
No.
They're just making the most of. They're doing what they should do with the equipment they've got, but I'm not attracted to it the same way.
Well, I think the golf course is you've got to think about I think that the change in the equipment has almost developed a gap between the normal club amateur and the professional game. The gap is widening as we go on. The sort of club member, he wants to get the ball to go further, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for that. Yeah,
but the reverse is for the professional game. Which I don't know how the official bodies will get over that, to be honest.
Well, the listeners to this will probably get fed up with me banging on about this, but I have had this discussion with, like Sir Martin Slumbers at the R&A and Peter Dawson before that. And, I always maintain that they always have this fear of what they call bifurcation, the different rules for players at professional level and players at my level. But I maintain that they've created that already by doing nothing, because as you just said, that the gap between me, the amateur, and you, the professional, now has never been wider. And they've created that by basically doing nothing.
Mm.
And I mourn the demise of the game that you played a little bit.
Yeah. But in the professional game of my era, there wasn't much gap.
The club champion could give you a game at his club.
Right. Yeah. But today, if you go out with Rory or any of the long hitters, the gap is huge.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, they're hitting wedges on par fours that we used to be hitting 2 woods at.
Well, I was watching about the Wentworth this morning just on the television before I came along here, and I said to somebody, do you remember the time when they used to hit 2 irons to the first green at Wentworth?
Yeah.
Now they're hitting short irons. They're driving it to the bottom of the hill.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just unheard of in your day, I'm sure.
Oh no, it wasn't even in the game.
No,
going down that hill.
Yeah. But so what, if I was to put you in charge, you're in Mr. Golf, you're in charge of golf. What would you do, if anything, about all this?
Well, that would be a difficult problem, I think, for me, because then you've got to consider the manufacturers, how they advertise length of golf balls for the amateur game. They're going to, any sort of change in the rules, they're going to kick against. If you try to shorten the golf ball, because that is the only thing you can do, I think.
It's the easy fix, isn't it?
It's the easy fix. Are the pros going to stand for that? Well, I wouldn't like to be in the position, to be honest.
Yeah. You're dodging this.
I am.
You're a good politician.
Probably the official bodies are doing the same.
Yes, well, absolutely. They're putting it off as long as possible. Put it that way. Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we'll move on, because I think the listeners, they're tired. They're certainly tired of me banging on about this subject. But when people mention Neil Coles to me, the first thing that always comes to mind, I think it's probably true for most people, is the aeroplane thing. You didn't fly.
Oh yeah.
Take me back to how that came about. Was it a claustrophobia thing, or was it just the thought of being in a metal tube 30,000 feet up in the air? Or
no, I mean, I flew through the 50s quite a lot. Flew to Ireland, flew to America, no problem. But then I flew on a very short flight. I went up to Glen Eagles, which was a tournament that we used to play. It was a foursomes event at the end of the year, and I went up with a member at Coombe Hill, and we flew up there, and on the way back we got in one of these very wide-bodied aeroplanes, absolutely packed, and flew down to London, and London was fogged in, so it circled London for about an hour. And the more it circled, the worse I got. Claustrophobic.
Right.
Very claustrophobic. Perspiration dripping off the end of my nose, and a woman said, "Are you all right?" And I wasn't all right.
No. What did it feel like?
Well, not very pleasant, I must admit. Yeah. And then I came off the plane, and my wife was there, and I said, "That's the last time I fly." And I never did.
Yeah, I looked up. It was 1960, which was the year I was born. So we'd gone 61 years, and you've never set foot in a plane.
No.
Did you never think to try and do something about it? Be hypnotized, or
Well,
there was a few things you could have done.
But no, I've thought about going to because British Airways used to run these sort of seminars, didn't they?
For people who were scared.
Yeah. And but I never did, and. Inconvenient at times.
Well, absolutely. I was going to ask that. I mean, because it hurt you professionally.
Yeah. Going to in the wintertime, particularly nipping down to Spain for a few weeks to practice in the sunshine. That sort of thing, to drive down there is quite a schlep.
Yeah. You must have, I always felt sorry for your poor cars. You must have put a few miles on cars over the years. A few million, probably.
Yeah, that's right. But I've got one in the garage at the moment, an old Mercedes, which has done a few miles. That's been down to Spain a couple of times.
Yeah. So any regrets on that score?
There were occasions when I got invited to tournaments in America, which I didn't go to because of it. So that would have been a regret, probably. Probably, yeah.
I mean, as you well know, I came here to this very house 2 years ago and did a story on you. The working headline was the best player America's never heard of.
Oh, yes, that's right. Yeah.
They basically don't know who you are. I mean, over there. I mean, that to me, I would have some regrets about that. As good a player as you were.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a lot you could have achieved if you.
I'm not sure I would have spent. I once spent 3 months over there in '65. But I'm not. I think you, as the modern player does, I think you've got to move lock, stock and barrel over there.
Yeah, you've got to do what Tony Jacklin did.
Yeah, you've got to. And the modern player does that. They have a base where they can go back to.
Yeah.
But to just go there to play golf, it's golf, motels, travel, golf, motels, travel. I'm not.
Doesn't sound like you right now.
No, it's not. I did it for 3 months and I'd had enough at the end of the time.
Were you just by yourself?
My wife was with me part of the time, but not ideal.
No. Did you take the boat over? Is that
I did, yes.
Yeah. How long did that take?
By the time you've got out of Southampton, gone across to, I think it was Le Havre, to pick up the French people. It's a 5-day trip. And then you get off the boat in New York, which was, in that case, it was January. So I went down to the 3A's office under this particular hotel we were stopping in, and they said, you can't go straight across because I've got to pick up the tour in San Francisco. So I had to get from New York to San Francisco. And so I had to drive.
Oh.
And they said, you can't go straight across because it's all snowed in.
Oh.
So,
so
you have to go way south and then go across and sort of then come up.
Yeah.
So through California up into San Francisco, where I picked up the tour and played all the way back again.
Well, what did you make of the tour? I mean, the golf style of golf, like it? Did you like that? I mean, we're talking about the social aspect of it. Obviously, wasn't for you, but the actual golf. I mean, how did you find that?
Yeah, well, that was fine. A little bit different. More target golf in those, as it is today here. But I mean, I enjoyed the golf courses.
How did you do? I mean, there's a couple of high finishes in there, isn't there?
Yes, reasonable. Reasonable. I don't think I missed. Did I miss the cut? I don't think I missed the cut once, but didn't win a lot of money.
Why did you go? Because you felt you had to, or because you thought make you a better player, or what?
I played in the Plessington Pro-Am, and I played in the Plessington Pro-Am 2 or 3 times with the same guy. And he always had this friend who used to walk around with us. And on the 2nd or 3rd time, I can't remember, he said, "Can I speak to you, Neil?" And I said, yes. And we went into the other room, and he said, "I'd like to sponsor you in America." So I said, "Oh, well, yeah, that'd be very nice." And he said, "You can take your wife and take your children and take the caddy." So I said, "Well, I think the children are at school, and I think I can pick a caddy up over there, but I'd like to take my wife." So he said, "Oh, make all the arrangements and let me know how much it is." And that's what happened. That's why I went for 3 months.
Good deal.
Yeah. So I played for 3 months and finished up at the Masters.
Yeah. I was going to ask you about that. I was looking at your record. one appearance in a major championship in America.
Yeah.
And you withdrew because you got the flu, I think.
Yes, that's right.
I mean, there's got to be some regret about that, is there not? I mean...
Yeah, I was regret that I didn't complete the...
Well, not just that week, but just in general. I mean, you never played in a US Open, never played in a PGA. I mean, I've kind of argued in the past that even the next generation after you, I mean, sort of Mark James, Sam Torrance, Ken Brown, Howard Clark kind of group, they hardly got to play in the American majors either. I mean, I think Ken Schofield and maybe yourself came along and changed that, but I've never been able to take the majors seriously as the kind of be all and end all of records for greatness, if you like, until fairly recently when everybody got to play.
Yeah,
I mean, before that it was just America.
I think
and one or two others.
Westwood just hit 100 that he's played.
He might have done, yeah.
Well, I played the Open, and I suppose I played 20 majors.
Yeah, probably something
about
like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, it's not fair not to use that as the
not really. No, not compared with the modern player.
No, I mean, I think that group I mentioned, and certainly you and maybe Peter Alice and Christy O'Connor, you were all competitive at the highest level. I mean, one of you would have popped up and won one over there. I mean, you're not going to tell me that the Mark James, Ken Brown, Sam Howard Clark group are not as good as Bob Tway and Jeff Sluman and Larry Mize and those guys.
One of the guys would have.
Yeah, it would have happened.
Got into there.
Yeah,
he'd have played enough.
Yeah, so it's always struck me as I kind of roll my eyes a little bit. I mean, it's fair enough now because everybody gets to play, basically. Yeah, that's right. But I mean, when Seve won his first Masters in 1980, there was 4 Europeans in the field, and one of them was an amateur.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's very different. And he got to play that year because he was in the top 1 in the Open the year before.
That's right. Well, I used to get invites to the Masters every year. Mm-hmm. But the trouble is you played winter golf here.
Yeah.
All the way up to that date of the April or early April. Mm-hmm. And to go from winter golf here to the Masters,
impossible.
It would have been on, to be honest.
Yeah. So you were never tempted to go over there for a month before?
Not really. No.
Yeah. A lot of effort if you're not going to fly, right?
Yes, that's right. And I had a pretty good life out of.
Yeah, well, I'm not knocking it off far from it. I'm just wondering if you think to yourself in quiet moments.
Yeah.
If I'd just been able to jump in a plane, it would have been a hell of a lot different.
Yeah. Well, it probably would have been, but. Anyway, here we are.
And I wanted to ask you about the Ryder Cup, moving right along. Right. You played, you never played for Europe. Obviously, your last time was the last GB&I team.
That's right.
Sort of describe it to the listeners, how it was back then and how different it was from the way it is now.
Well, I think the the team was all short of... in the bottom end, we were all short of players. And the strong players of that era had to play 36 holes a day. And by the end of the week, you were shot.
Pretty knackered, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because of the pressures of playing for a team, playing for your country, and, the pressures of that alone are greater than playing for yourself, or different. Yeah. Different. Yeah. But and then just the physical side of 36 holes a day for 3 days.
Well, you'd be one of those that was asked to do that, were you?
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And when we harbed in Birkdale, that was the Nicklaus Jacqueline pub. I said to Eric Brown, I said, I've got one 18 holes left in me in the morning. And I was playing Tommy Aaron, and I won one up, came in, and that was all I had to give, sort of thing. Yeah. And he said, I'm sorry, Neil, I've got to play you this afternoon. And and I walked around. Yeah. But I didn't perform at all.
Yeah. The teams are a lot deeper now.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean the teams today has proven with a success.
Yeah,
through and through, good players all the way through.
Tiff Tough Hybrid Bermuda. Tough by name, tough by nature. This sports turf variety supplied by Lawn Solutions Australia is taking sport to another level. With superior drought tolerance, speedy recovery and toughness, Tiff Tough really is the smart grass. For more information and your nearest supplier, head to lawnsolutionsaustralia.com.au.
Who were the best players of your era on your team?
Well, Peter Ellis, Christie, Bernard Hunt, and then who else was there? It varied with each team, of course.
Yeah. I mean, obviously Jacqueline came along. Oosterhuis was good.
Oosterhuis was good.
Yeah.
Peter
Townsend I always thought was
Peter Townsend. He was a good player.
Yeah.
But then there was a few that weren't. John Garner never played.
Yeah, I talked to him fairly recently. I did a story on the kind of old GB&I guys that kind of get forgotten.
Yeah.
And I found him in New Zealand. He lives in New Zealand now.
Yeah.
And I found Peter Townsend in the north of Sweden.
I know.
He lives up there.
He lives somewhere up in the Arctic Circle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing where I came across them.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all had stories to tell. I mean, they all, remembered it well.
Yeah.
And I'm going to, bring up something that, everybody talks about Brian Barnes beating Jack Nicklaus twice in a day, but you did a similar thing to Doug Sanders.
Yeah, Houston.
67.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
I'm looking for some Ryder Cup stories. What first comes to mind when you?
Well, that one was we were all square coming down 15, and Doug, I hit my second into a bunker on the left-hand side, which plugged. And as we approached the green, he said, "Well, that's good, Neil. That's a good day's golf. You beat me this morning, and it looks as if I'm going to go one up at this stage."
He actually said that.
He did say that. I said, "Well, it's not over yet, Doug."
Yeah.
He was up the back of the green, and I knocked my plugged bunker shot out, stone dead. And we halved the hole. And then 16, I hold a putt for 2, 1 up, and hold right from the front of the green at 17 to beat him 2 and 1. And I said, "Oh, thanks very much, Doug."
Yeah. What did he say to that? Can you repeat it?
Too pleased.
No, I can imagine.
That's.
It must have been a hard thing, was it? I mean, every 2 years, there wasn't much hope of winning back then. I mean, as you say, the team wasn't deep enough, really. 69 was the highlight, obviously, but
That's right.
Generally speaking, it was, a bit of a stroll for them, the Americans.
Oh, yeah, it was, yeah.
What did that feel like? How did you go into it?
I think you went into it as an individual. An individual playing an individual. And you didn't really think about, you were obviously trying to put points on the board for the team, but, you were playing an individual game, so it wasn't quite as bad as that. But you almost resigned to the fact that, they were going to be better than you were. But.
Was Jacqueline the best player of the teams that you played on?
Yeah,
for a brief period, certainly.
I think the captain inspired when we halved Eric Brown, and you remember Eric?
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
he inspired the team because he was not going to take any nonsense from them.
He was a hard bugger, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. And then the Jacqueline winning the Open, American Open, was an inspiration. And that was the first time that I'd played in there where everybody was playing well.
In 69, you're talking? Yeah.
And everybody, I don't know whether it's the captain or Jacqueline or, we felt good about that, that week. Yeah. And,
where were you when the famous concession putt was given? Were you around?
I think I was in the clubhouse.
Probably having a seat after
I was finished by then. Yeah, I think I was. Yeah, I was up in the restaurant up in Birkdale. I actually saw it happen. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was. Yeah, I was there up there.
Were you surprised? Would you have done something like that? I mean, a lot of the Americans weren't too happy with them.
The captain Sneed wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't very happy. He wasn't
chuffed.
No. Well, it was one of those iffy lengths.
Yeah,
it was 2.5 feet probably.
I don't think anybody would have criticised Nicklaus if he'd made him putt.
No, but Nicklaus had a feeling about the Ryder Cup that we needed either a win or a half. And he was the instigator of bringing Europe. Right?
Yeah, well, later on, he kind of got fed up with it, to be honest, didn't he? Really?
Yeah, he did. And I think that he had a feeling about the Ryder Cup that it would die if something didn't happen.
Yeah. Was that the highlight for you, 69? The tie?
Yeah, it probably was, yeah. Yes.
And when it did change, how did you feel about that? Were you kind of with Nicklaus?
Yeah, well, I was on the committee and we were all for that. Something had to change.
Yeah,
it was had to change or die. And that was, I think, was it the Weisskopf who didn't play?
He didn't come. He went hunting.
Yeah, he went hunting. That's right. Yeah. So that was, if you like, an indication that the thing would sort of finish. Mm-hmm. So we had to do something, and that was a good result, I think. In hindsight.
Yeah, well, obviously. I mean, it's become this, my goodness, it's hard to describe what it is now.
Yeah, it's huge now.
Yeah.
And so, it's proven that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, I went to see it as a young, just barely a teenager at Muirfield in 73, because it was near where I lived.
Yeah.
And it was very different then compared with what it's become.
Yeah.
And I think it was better in some ways. Certainly the crowd aspect of it. There was no booing or jeering or insults flying around or none of that stuff.
No,
maybe because there was never any doubt really about the result.
Yeah, right.
It was. I mean, I've been to some of them recently, and it's not good.
No,
it's some of the stuff that's getting.
Well, I was watching the ladies, this week, and
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't a lot of clapping going on when a European held a putt, was there?
There wasn't.
But there were.
Didn't they do well?
Well, they were absolutely fantastic. I mean, the wee Irish girl was terrific.
Yeah.
I mean,
I believe there's not many supporters going over for the Ryder Cup. So.
Well, there can't be, no. I mean,
so I don't know. I think the European team should have earplugs.
Yeah, well, maybe. I think, but by the time this goes out, we'll know what's happened.
Oh, right.
So we'll have to make. We're speculating, but when people listen to this, they'll know what went on at Whistling Straits.
Yeah.
So, who knows? I mean, the European team looks pretty good from this angle.
It does. Yeah, pretty strong. Yeah.
So, anyway, how involved were you in the discussions of when the Ryder Cup changed? I mean, and what was the thinking? What were the options on the table, sort of thing? Was there any thought of just killing the thing off?
No. I mean, the revenues that we got from the Ryder Cup, there was never any question of letting it die. And it was almost accepted that we had to do something, and that was the best result.
Yeah.
There was never any question of letting it drift away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, it's a pretty obvious thing to do, but it probably wasn't that obvious at the time, was it? I mean, just to...
It was well, we were a European tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I'm going to get to in a minute.
So the obvious thing was that it became a European team. Mm-hmm. So I think that was on the cards right from day one, really. That it was going to happen.
Yeah. Did you sort of speak to the European lads or the Continentals and ask them, were they even interested in playing? Or did it
Don't think we did. No.
Just announce
it? Well, they were all members anyway. So they were all members. They just became included in the team. Which,
They didn't get revved up right away either. I mean, it was a 79 team, only had the two Spaniards in it.
Yeah.
And and then Seve didn't play in 81, which I'm going to ask you about as well.
Yeah.
And then it was 83 before it really kicked off as a competitive thing.
Yes, it was. Yeah.
So. But you must take some pleasure from that, that you've built, you were, there on the ground floor sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few. It was a committee, so it was chaired by Lord Derby, so that was, and it was his. I think Nicklaus got in touch with Lord Derby to say that you've got to strengthen your team, and so he came to. It was a joint committee, PGA European Tour,
right.
And it was accepted almost straight away. That was the way we were going to go.
Yeah, because 77. I mean, you know better than me because you played in it, but it seemed like there was hardly any golf. There wasn't much. There was only about 3 series or something to play. I mean, it was very Spartan. Thing.
Yeah.
Maybe that was maybe what convinced Nicklaus.
That's right. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm going to drag you back a few years to the 71, I think, 71, 72, the beginning of the European Tour as is now. Yeah. It was kind of like in America where there was a split with the PGA and between the sort of club pro side of things and playing side of things.
Yeah.
Was it a similar kind of scenario that started off?
There was a group of us by this time who, if you like, I was one of the first to just be a tournament player. And then there were the numbers got greater and greater that were just playing golf.
Yeah.
Although some of them were employed at clubs. And we wanted to run our own affairs and spend our own money. So we put together, and headed by John Jacobs, and we became I forget what it was now. It's such a long time ago.
Was it the European Tour Players Division?
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. That's what it was. And run by a committee, of which I was on. Bernard Hunt was the chairman, and John Jacobs was the main man who ran it. And then the PGA...
Yeah, how happy were they about all this?
They were not happy.
Yeah.
That we were beginning to form this breakaway section. And they came up to Fulford at the Benson and Hedges with lawyers and tried to sack John Jacobs. And
what was his official position at that point?
Well, he was what was his? I must have had a title.
Chairman of the board of the ETPD.
No, Bernard Hunt was the chairman of the committee.
Right.
And then Bernard, for some reason, he didn't want to become chairman.
Right.
Because of this war, if you like, with the people in the PGA, and so he resigned almost the sort of couple of days before or the night before.
Before the lawyers.
Before we got into this lecturing hall in the University of New York.
Right.
And John Jacobs said, well, you've been making all the noise, Neil, so you can be chairman. So I went, well, thanks, John.
Yeah, yeah.
So...
but you stepped up.
I stepped up, and we were then all ushered into this lecture hall with all the players, there. And I had to stand up with the lawyers of the PGA and the PGA committee. And I said, John Jacobs is only acting on behalf of the committee. He's not acting on his own. He's acting under instruction from the committee. And that sort of, the lawyers got up and walked out.
Really?
Because
why?
Because they'd been given the wrong story, I think, from the PGA.
Okay. Did they think they were going to be able to go after an individual?
Yeah, they thought it was John Jacobs, but not a committee of the players.
Right.
And so that sort of finished that, and we then became much stronger. And then sometime later, they all moved to the Belfry, and we stayed at the Oval.
Right. How long did that all take? How long did
the split?
How long did it drag on from start to finish when you thought, right, we're going to do this, to the point where you did do it?
Well, I think that was the sort of instigation of, from that point on, we were the European Tour, and they were the PGA, and then both based at the Oval, and then the physical movement of them moving to the Belfry, and we stayed in London, because it suited us, and that was the if you like, the final separation.
Yeah, exactly, physical separation. Yeah. Were you a natural administrator?
No.
Well,
no,
you were there a long time, though, so you must have been doing something right.
I think, fortunately, I was the chairman for that, but with Ken and George, my theory was that I was a figurehead, and
this is Schofield and O'Grady, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
They were the CEOs. They ran it, and they made the decisions, and that was my way of operating as chairman.
You're a rubber stamp kind of guy, is that?
Yeah, I had.
You had some input, I'm sure.
I
can't believe you were just sitting back and letting them get on with it. I don't believe
on
that.
occasion.
Yeah, we can imagine.
There were instances of.
Give me an example.
There was one, the guy who ran the Bob Hope Classic. I don't know what his name was. He came up to the Belfry. We were having a committee meeting, and I sat there, and Ken was saying, Ken said, and he's suing me. I said, oh, is he? Where is he?
This guy was suing Ken.
Yeah. So I said, where is he? So he said, oh, he's outside. So I said, right, you outside, don't mention a word. I'll do all the talking.
Right. What did you say?
I went out. I said, I understand that you're suing him. So he said, yes. I said, you're not suing him, because he worked for us. You're suing us. I said, if you tear it up in front of me, you've got a tournament. If you don't, you haven't.
Oh, this is a new Neil Coles for me, this.
And he went,
good on.
I said, right, now you can come in and talk about a golf tournament.
Right. Well, you're tougher than you looked. This genial figure,
No, just there comes a stage where you've got to assert yourself.
Yeah.
And but Ken never didn't say a word.
No. Well, no, should he? If you just let you.
Yeah, that's right.
You obviously had it. You had something in mind. So just see what happened.
Right. I didn't say much. Yeah. But he's second. I forget who his guy's name. He was from South Africa, I think. No.
But you sorted him out anyway. That's good.
Well, yeah, but it was a pretty straightforward thing as far as I was concerned.
Yeah, you took a pretty tough line with Seve in '81 as well with the appearance money thing. I mean, talk me through that. What was your feeling on that?
We'd had a lot of problems with Seve. He wanted appearance money against the rules. Mm-hmm. He wanted appearance money for all his, and he hadn't joined the tour. Mm-hmm. Although he was playing, he hadn't joined. Right. And Ken had a lot of hassle with him. And we got to the Benson and Hedges, and John Jacobs because it was John, myself, and Langer were the three.
Well, you told me about this. It was the first time you'd said to anybody, I think, when you told me who you actually, how the vote went.
Yes.
So it was 2-1.
So I walked in. John was already in the room when I got there. So that I joined John, and he said, you don't have to say to me. He wanted Seve in, obviously.
Yeah, he was the best player in the world at the time.
Yeah. And he said, I know how you feel, and are you still of the same mind? So I said, yes, I am. So that left the casting vote from Langer, who came in a few minutes later.
He was there. What was his role in that? Was he there as the number one in Europe, or what was his?
He was, why was it leader of the Order of Merit, I think.
Right, okay.
If I remember rightly. Yeah. And so he came in, and Langer's a man of few words. Mm-hmm. And John said to him, what's your feeling? And he said, I don't think he should be in. That was it.
And that was it.
2-1.
Yeah. What was your feeling on the bigger picture of the appearance money, and specifically Sevy's argument that why would he not get it when some of them leading Americans at the time were being paid to come and play?
Yeah, well.
What was your counter argument to that?
I think there were ways around it.
Mm-hmm. Well, the PGA Tour's proven that. I mean, they claim to have no appearance money, but their players are appearing at cocktail parties and whatever else, on Tuesday evening.
There were, 50,000 to chip over the cocktail party, it gets round it.
Yeah.
I mean, that was very short-sighted of Seve or his manager not to do it that way.
He was pretty dogmatic, though, wasn't he, Seve? I mean,
he was very.
Dug himself in, yeah.
Yeah, he was. Whether he, but...
it just seemed to me at the time, I was pretty young, but looking at it from a distance, it was such a shame, that he wasn't in the team because he was the best player.
Oh, he was,
And I was like you, I thought there has to be a way, a compromise in this, in here somewhere. But did he basically drove you to the point where, we can't do anything else? Is that fair?
Yes. Yeah, he should have found a way.
Yeah. But he was always driven by the money.
He was.
The money was important to say. Because I think partly because he came from nothing. He had nothing growing up.
Angel told me a story once, Angel Gallardo, about he drove an old Peugeot apparently, and the Range Rover gave him a Range Rover, and he sent it back after 2 weeks because it uses too much petrol.
It's too expensive to run with it. That sounds like him running.
But, that's the sort of... that's where he came from, Seve. You can't blame a guy for...
Do you think... Where do you go on the ranking Seve versus Faldo versus the rest of them? Where would you put that? The so-called Big Five that came along. How would you rank them?
Different. Seve was a natural player, and I saw him hit shots which I didn't believe. Great hands, great putter, but then Faldo was the opposite of that. Method, straight down the middle. Also great putter, but and great players with great records, both of them. But so different in method and
And what were the other three? I'm going to ask you to put them 1 to 5. What order would you put them in?
Yeah, I think I'd put Seve at the top.
He's certainly the most historically significant.
Yes.
I mean, he moved the needle more than anybody else.
Yeah, and then Faldo.
I remember I was actually the person who asked Seve once, if everybody played their best at a tournament, Seve, who would win? And he looked at me as if I was mad and said, well, Sandy would win. Sandy for that brief 2 or 3 years there, he was unbelievably good. And then Seve thought he was the best, which is quite a compliment.
I played with Sandy in the practice round when he won the Open with Bernie Gallagher, and he was unbelievably good, even in the practice round.
Yeah.
Unbeatable.
Yeah. Nobody hit one irons like him.
No. And strong, long, everything. And, it wasn't a surprise that he won the Open.
No, you should have got some money on him.
Yes. But, then probably Sandy next. And then who else? And then
Langer and Woosnam.
Langer in the long term has proven to has won more than anybody. He's still playing well.
Yeah, it's 63 or whatever it is. Yeah.
So where you'd put Langer in the pecking order now, I'm not sure.
It's a good debate, I think, because Langer. I'm not sure Langer was ever the best player in the world. If he was, it was pretty brief. But Woosie was the best player for about a year. Yeah,
he was. Yeah.
So it depends how you look at it.
Yeah, that's right. Langer, Woosnam, but it's where they were in their form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I'm a big thing for longevity.
Yeah.
You can make a case that Sam Snead was the best player of all time because he was great longer than anybody else has been great.
Yeah.
You know, and you could relate to that. I mean, you played at an incredibly high level for such a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that gets a wee bit overlooked.
Yeah, Langer's, he just goes on and on.
Yeah. Anyway, I want to talk about the Open. You
Right.
were close a couple of times, I think.
Yeah.
Played it. Talk to me about your Open record, and did you get close to winning? And are there any regrets looking back that you didn't?
I think the only chance I had of winning was Palmer's win at Birkdale. I had an incredibly low first 9, and I think I was almost at the point of leading at that stage, and then I started back with 5, 5, 5, 5.
Yeah,
and that blew me right out, and I eventually finished third. Palmer, Rees, and myself.
Yeah,
but that was the only chance of winning.
Mm-hmm.
And then second at Troon, I was never...
You came from a long way back there, didn't
I
you?
was coming right from the back, but Weiskopf was so far ahead with a few holes to play that I was never going to win that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was pulling up into second place.
Yeah.
With I got a 3 at the last, if you like, to finish.
It rained all week at Troon.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
And that suited me.
Well, I was just going to ask you about that because I read somewhere way back in the day that you were never a huge fan of links golf because of the bounciness, and you preferred the inland stuff. And Troon played like an inland course.
It did that week, and it was very much target golf because it was so wet, and I played well, because of that.
Mm-hmm. Was that just how you saw the shots? I mean,
Yeah.
Again, I get back to playing in America. That sounds like American golf to me.
Yeah. Eventually, but played with Lanny Watkins in the last round.
So you'd get
and I hit a lot of shots.
Round quick.
I had a lot of shots very close, and every time I hit this shot close, I mean very close. Oh, great shot! It was almost surprising.
Yeah. It's patronising you, pat on the head. Yeah, who are you anyway?
Yeah,
So,
where have you come from?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah.
So no regrets on the Open then. I mean, you had an incredibly low round at St Andrews, I think, didn't you? It's 1970. You were leading after one round.
65.
Yeah.
That was almost the washout.
Yes.
Open.
Yeah.
When Jacqueline was
he was
low as well, but I expected them to scrub that round, driving back. I think we were stopping over the river at Dumfries, is it? Or
Dundee. Yeah,
Dundee.
Tay Bridge, yeah.
Yeah, and I was driving over that bridge, and it was absolutely bucketing down. Mm-hmm. And I said to my wife, I said, they'll scrub it today, but they didn't.
Well, they had to stop eventually. I mean, the place was flooded.
There
was lightning as well. So, yeah.
I remember the water coming down
Yeah,
the steps.
that's right. Exactly. The Arnie Clubhouse. Yeah. That was the first Open I ever went to.
Yeah.
You don't remember me. I was a little guy in shorts.
Oh, right.
But, I mean, I keep coming back to the if I was you, I'd be sitting here thinking, damn, everybody's got regrets. I mean, as you get older, do you get a wee bit maudlin about it? I mean, I think I would. I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you just think, well, it is what it was, or,
Yeah, I was great. I trained myself right from the very start to once that round of golf's over, that's history.
Mm. Yeah, I suppose you have to be like that. Yeah.
And, that's in the past.
Yeah.
I've got no regrets. If I had a bad round, that's history.
Mm-hmm.
I look forward to what's coming up.
Yeah.
And I've always thought that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good way to be. I mean, it makes more sense than me sitting, fretting about it.
Yeah. And no regrets. Had a good living, good life.
Yeah.
Both myself and my wife had great, good life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some funny things. If you look around this house, the captain at St George's Hill of Stuart Letts, they're doing a sort of section of wall for me.
Yeah.
See?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I want you to get all your memorabilia out on the dining room table, Neil.
And you're thinking, have I got any?
And he said, I would, and then we can just sort it out.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'm not doing that. And so they came along, him and the chairman, and we sat in the lounge there. And he said, have you got all the stuff ready, Neil? So I said, no. So he went, oh, why not? So I said, because, Stuart, we'll start off here. These are the Ryder Cup replicas in the dining room.
Yeah.
And we'll go around present in the Ryder Cup. All the cups in there.
Yeah.
I said, now we'll walk through to the dining room. This is all Ryder Cup stuff. Pictures of this.
Yeah.
All that stuff on there is from presents that we've ever had.
Yeah.
And the chairman said, Stuart, this is like a museum. And then they took him into the study where all the pictures are.
Right.
I tried to get all the pictures of me in prize giving.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
so they're all in there.
Right.
And that was it, really. And
So it's never happened.
it never happened. But they've done it.
Yeah.
In fact, I've got to go up next week and they're going to present it to me. So.
I wanted to finish off, and we've done a fair bit of looking back, obviously.
Yeah.
I wanted to look forward. How do you feel about what's happening with the European Tour and the PGA Tour at the moment? I mean, what the direction of things? How are you viewing that from a distance these days?
I think the leakage of the top players to America, which started with Ken, continued with George, and now has reached a stage where it is very difficult to get them to come back here.
Yeah.
When they're living in America, they're traveling. The money is such that they fly in their own jets to tournaments. They play the same surfaces every week for huge amounts of money. And at the end of the day, the pension funds that they receive when their playing days are over are so huge that it's almost a no-brainer for that top group. And the difficulty from the European Tour's point of view is, what do you do about that? And the amalgamation of some sort of deal between America and the European Tour could alleviate some of that problem. But I don't know, I don't know the details.
Yeah, I mean,
because I'm not in the loop, as it were.
Well, with the role of the European Tour has sort of been redefined, it seems to me, as an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
We'll see what's going to happen, but what would you like to see happen?
It's a difficult one, that. I mean, you've got to provide golf for the up-and-coming guys.
Yeah.
Because that's where your top players come from.
Yeah.
As long as that happens, that the European players get the opportunity to play in their own tournaments, I'm not sure whether it's a joint venture between.
The danger is it not that the European Tour could become the sort of second division, and there'd be promotion and relegation, and there'd be a pathway, as you say. That
could happen, I suppose.
I mean, I'm just thinking out loud, really.
Yeah, because I'm not involved anymore. It's I'm not sure of the.
If I put you in charge, what would you like to see, though? a true partnership.
We experienced the difficulty through Ken and George, of my time, of trying to get the players to come back and support the home tournaments, which was very difficult.
What was their argument about not coming? Just that there's too much money here.
Money.
Yeah.
Money. Pensions. Surfaces. Weather. Ease of travel.
The obvious things, yeah.
It's all a sort of, there's a list there. Once we were talking about it in a board meeting some years ago, and somebody said, well, what would you do, Neil, if you were at the top? I said, I listed all the things, and I said, it's a no-brainer. I said, I'd be over there.
Yeah. So it's not a battle they can win then, it sounds like.
There's some, whether they come up with a solution to it, whether there's an amalgamation of some description.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe the European Tour, as it's gone the last few years, there's been times of the year where the European Tour has been the place to be. There's the sort of Middle East run at the beginning.
Yeah.
The sort of month between the US Open and the Open was always a, fertile part of the European Tour. And then after the end of the American Tour when they finish, after that, there's a period where there's a few big money events where they could come and play. But other than that, I mean, the sort of February, March, it's tumbleweed on the European Tour. I mean, there's not a lot going on.
No, there isn't.
There's tournaments, but there's none of the big names are playing.
No.
They're in America.
Yeah.
And as I say, I'm with you. I'm not sure that's a battle you can ever win. You're professionals and you play for money. So,
and I mean, such huge money. That you can't compete with it.
Yeah. I mean, they're winning more money in a week now than Jack Nicklaus won in his career, sort of thing. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, I won, what did I win? Through main tour and seniors tour, I won just over $1 million.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Which is a lot of money at that time.
It sounds a lot of money, but it's not over 50 years or whatever it was.
And you're paying your own way, of course, as well. So,
And, that's 1 week's money these days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh no, it's out of control. I mean, the lives they live now are so divorced from the ordinary guy in the street.
It's like the footballers, isn't it?
Yeah, the same thing. Yeah,
it's exactly the same. It's not obscene, but it's
I had a question, a Ryder Cup question, which struck me when I looked at your record, and I should have asked you this earlier, but you didn't play in 1975. What went on there? You played every year from 61 to 77, apart from 75. Can you remember what was going on then? Were you ill, or was the boat too slow, or what was?
I think it was on the West Coast, wasn't it?
No, it was it's in Pennsylvania, where Palmer was from, because he was the captain.
Oh, was he?
Yeah. So.
I don't remember why I didn't play.
It struck me that there was this little gap.
So
maybe he just played rubbish.
Yeah, I can't remember why I didn't play there.
Yeah. Anyway, no big deal. Yeah. Just wondered. My very last question. I'm going to lapse into cliche here. Right. How would you like Neil Coles to be remembered? Speaking in the third person for a minute.
Well, I think probably my record of wins, I think stands up against most.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
42 wins through the majors and major tour and seniors tour.
So just as a bloody good player, isn't it?
Yeah, just consistent.
Yeah. You did for a long time as well.
Yeah. I mean,
you never got the yips. Did you ever get any?
Well, I did.
Any of those symptoms?
I did get the yips.
Yeah. I think everybody does a little bit, don't they?
Yeah. Did it from time to time.
Yeah.
Yeah, but luckily I came out of it. I had my own method of getting out of it. And
Finish on that. The cure for the yips. We're going to cure the yips.
well, I played in the Dutch Open once, and I was playing as good as I ever played. And I was playing with Christie Senior. But when I walked onto the green, I never even looked at the putt. I just hit it towards the hole. And he said, "You're not trying at all." I said, "Even if I try, I shall miss it."
Yeah.
So I'm just hitting it at the hole. Yeah. And if it goes in, fine. But if it doesn't, I'm quite happy with that.
Because he had a few issues on that as well.
Oh, he did, yeah.
When Peter Alice was terrible.
Yeah. And Christie was, I played in the foursomes at Atlanta with him. And we got on the first green and he said, "Can you see the grain on these greens, Neil?" So I said, "Yeah." Well, I sort of got some idea. Yeah. He said, "Just tell me where to hit it." Well, that was a bit of a shock.
Yeah, partner.
But he wasn't great on the greens either.
No, it was maybe of course the greens weren't as good back then either.
Oh no, they were
rubbish compared.
Rubbish now.
That's why everybody was so wristy back then.
Yeah,
you had to do that.
We used to arrive at a golf tournament. Are they slow or fast this week? You didn't know.
Yeah.
But a fast was sort of running at about 9.
Yeah.
And slow was 5. Yeah.
Yeah. Unheard of now.
Unheard of. Yeah. If they're not sort of 11 or 12 now, there's ructions, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh. It's not the same as last week or the week before, It's got to be the same. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Anyway, on that happy note, I thank you for your time, Neil. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed the chat.
Well, great pleasure. Okay. Great pleasure to answer the question.
What a delightful throwback to a different and more genteel time and a peek into a world of professional golf that is truly all but unrecognisable today. I sometimes wonder if any of us, today's players included, really appreciate just how difficult the game was in Neil Coles's time. Terrific work there from John Huggan, and that's an interview that I know I'll come back and listen to again. Now, as romantic as the past sounds, we can't live there. So on our next episode, we're fast-forwarding all the way to the present, but taking a slight left turn to Iceland. Yes, Iceland, to chat with one of the most interesting golf course architects I've ever met, Edwin Roald. Trust me, if you have any interest in golf course architecture or the history of the game, you don't want to miss it. And between now and then, I highly recommend you do yourself a favour and check out some photos of golf in Iceland. Adventurous does not even begin to describe that landscape. That's Edwin Roald from Iceland, next time on The Thing About Golf.